Gamer Uncle here for HotCars.com. Welcome to another episode of Off-Road Legends. Today we're going to cover what is, without a doubt, my #1 favorite car of all time, the Lancia Stratos HF, or the Stratos Rally car, however you want to look at it, since it was a homologation road car built basically as a road car for the street. Now, of course, the Stratos didn't win as many championships as the later Lancia Delta HF Integrale, but that angular design, the Dino V6, the insanely short wheelbase, everything comes together to make the Stratos my absolute favorite. Plus, it did manage 3 World Rally Championship titles and a total of 18 WRC victories split between the Works team and privateers. The Stratos hails from an era when rally cars still had rear-wheel drive, before Audi revolutionized the game with quattro all-wheel drive traction. So I discovered the Stratos in YouTube videos watching rally drivers pilot this incredibly futuristic alien design, basically sideways at all times, with that Dino V6 screaming. And then I saw one in person at a Malibu Cars and Coffee a few years back, and I was just absolutely dumbfounded. It looks tiny on camera, but it's even tinier in person. My girlfriend still makes fun of me. It's the only Cars and Coffee she's ever gone to, and she just kept taking a bunch of pictures of me as I was like a kid in a candy store. I even touched it just like this. The owner was very cool. He was letting some kids get into it to check out the cockpit, which is approximately the size of a Willy Wonka cartoon, but I checked it out. I didn't think I was gonna get in without at least scuffing something, so I said no thank you. To this day, I kind of regret that decision, because as I've learned more about the Stratos over the years, I've only come to love it even more. So let's get in from the concept stage all the way to the Stratos' successors, because it really helped Lancia establish some of the more dominant years of World Rally competition the world has ever seen. Before we move on, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks. What would eventually become the Lancia Stratos started out as one of the more futuristic concept cars the world has ever seen. Designed by Marcello Gandini of Bertone, the Stratos Zero debuted at the 1970 Turin Motor Show and captured the entire world's attention. It's about the lowest car you've ever seen in your life. The front windshield is a wraparound design that lifts up to allow access into a cockpit that looks more appropriate for, let's say, a DeLorean. The seats are almost fully lied down, like, I don't know, a Formula One car almost. I've checked out the Zero concept in person too, and you can see exactly where that design led to the Stratos, but how Lancia then changed the design to turn the Stratos into a rally car. So by 1971, the Stratos HF then debuted again at Turin as what would become the homologated version of a road-going rally car. So you have these two versions, but in the minds of enthusiasts, they kind of go together. Now, Gandini had already made a name for himself because he designed the iconic Lamborghini Miura, and the Stratos Zero obviously influenced his later Lamborghini design, which would become a 1980s icon, the Countach. The Countach's wedge shape also looks somewhat similar to the Stratos, although I can tell you the Stratos is so much smaller in person. The most mind-blowing stat that really shows how small the Stratos actually was as a road-going car and a race car is an 85.8-inch wheelbase. I swear that's like almost square. And you can see that show up when you watch videos of this car just sliding around. It's got Spider-Man agility, which was great in an era of rear-wheel drive rallying. It had a ton of power too, for the time. It used a Ferrari-sourced Dino V6, 2.4 liter. In this guise, it was pumping out 280 horsepower. And we're talking about a car that only weighed 2,161 pounds. It was in fact so light, there was so much aluminum used, that during development, that engine was strong enough to create forces powerful enough that the rear shock uprights would actually deform during acceleration. Lancia obviously had to rectify that situation before sending the Stratos out to compete in World Rally racing, but it just shows you, for the era, they were really pushing the boundaries of engineering to create what would become one of the greatest rally cars of all time. The idea of a Ferrari V6 powering a Lancia race car might seem a little counterintuitive because we know Enzo was a little bit cantankerous, but Ferrari never really got into rally racing the same way that Lancia did. So Enzo approved 500 Dino V6s for Lancia's use. Now, the story behind the Dino V6 actually goes back to a family relationship. Enzo never really wanted to build a V6 because we all know he loved his V12 powered sports cars. But his son, whose nickname was Dino, really wanted to build a mid-engine V6 powered sports car as sort of an entry-level Ferrari that could compete with Porsche's highly successful 911. Enzo eventually relented and allowed Dino to develop the V6, and then when that V6 went into a Ferrari vehicle, Enzo actually sold it under a different nameplate, the Dino, without any Ferrari badging. Now, today, the Dino is recognized as a Ferrari, even though it sort of isn't, and I've driven one, and it's just a ton of fun. You can check that video out on the Hot Cars YouTube channel, but the most important part for me was that I got to drive a mid-engine car powered by a Dino V6, which is, so far, the closest I've gotten to driving my favorite car of all time, the Lancia Stratos. That 2.4-liter V6 pumped out an insane 280 horsepower in such a tiny little rally car and made it able to do 0 to 60 in 6.8 seconds at the time. Depending on gearing and depending on the circuit, Lancia could allow for a top speed as high as 144 miles per hour. But at the other end of the spectrum, some Stratoses have gearing so aggressively short that they actually max out around 60 miles an hour, which seems completely against the point of high-speed rally racing, but when you're in those nimble corners, you want that low-end torque in first and second gear. The Stratos used a 5-speed manual transaxle, and we know that Lancia played with the gearing a lot. The Dino V6 was a huge step up from the concept's original Lancia Fulvia 1.6-liter V4 and powered the Stratos to 3 straight World Rally Constructor titles in 74, 75, and 76. Just listen to that Dino Ferrari engine scream as these guys go balls to the wall on some of the gnarliest rally courses the world has ever seen. Now you can see in those clips that the Stratos is getting pretty sideways. The rear wheels are spinning out a lot, and with the benefit of hindsight, we know that all-wheel drive really is the best platform for World Rally dominance. And the Stratos would eventually start to become a little bit obsolete. But actually, with Audi's Quattro on the horizon, Lancia made one more attempt to win at rallying with a rear-wheel drive sports car, and that was the Stratos' successor, the 037. The 037 was Lancia's first Group B rally car, and it took the world by storm as well, though more because of performance than all-out style. It was still angular, it was still a little bit wedgy, and Walter Röhrl managed to take home a win at Monte Carlo in 1983, beating out the Audi Quattros.
His second successive Monte Carlo Rally victory and the third of his career.
Marku Allen took home second. Despite being rear-wheel drive, the 037 managed to beat out Audi Quattro for the World Constructors title that year also.
It's Audi sadness, Lancia joy.
But that would be sort of a Pyrrhic victory for Lancia because it was the final rear-wheel drive car to ever win a World Rally Championship. So, to keep up with the times and mostly keep up with the Audi Quattro, Lancia then released a new rally car for Group B that would help to usher in the end of Group B, because we're talking about the absolutely insane turbocharged and supercharged Lancia S4. Pumping out up to 28 PSI of boost, it could do 600 horsepower in competition spec. Again, we're talking about a car that weighs a little over 2,000 pounds. It's absolutely maniacal. the much less powerful 037 had itself been involved in a Group B tragedy when Attilio Bettega crashed one head-on into a tree and died instantly in 1985. By the late 80s, Group B was taking lives left and right, not just from drivers and co-drivers, but also from spectators who really liked to crowd the course and risk their lives to get as close as they possibly could to the rallying action. The S4 really represented everything Lancia could throw at Group B in the hopes of being competitive with Audi, because by 1986 all the tragedies led to Group B being disbanded. But then Lancia pivoted, and they released one of the most iconic hot hatches of all time, one of my top 5 favorite cars of all time, the winningest rally car of all time, the Lancia Delta HF Integrale. Go check out our other video dedicated to the Lancia Integrale to learn more about how the Stratos set up Lancia for an entire era of dominance. But to this day, the rear-wheel drive, angular Lancia Stratos still remains my absolute favorite car of all time, and I hope that watching this video, you now agree. Let us know what other cars you want to see on Off-Road Legends in the comments, and as always, before you sign off, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us out. Thanks.